thing to know is that the Alzheimer's Center started a long time ago. It started in 1984. We saw our first patient in January of 1985. So, and the way the Alzheimer's Center works is we recruit people who have Alzheimer's disease or related dementia, and that can be frontotemporal dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies, et cetera. And individuals who are cognitively normal, but about the same age and with the same characteristics as the people with Alzheimer's disease as a control group. And over the years, there's this group that falls in between being cognitively healthy and having a full-blown dementia like Alzheimer's disease that's come to be known as mild cognitive impairment. So that's the third major group that we recruit into the ADRC. So when somebody gets recruited into the ADRC, what happens? So they receive an annual evaluation from us. So they come in, they have a neurology exam, physical examination. We ask them a lot of questions and scales I'll show you. You can see up on the screen. And a detailed neuropsychological evaluation. And I'll show you the test in just a second, just to give you a flavor for it. All of that happens. We draw blood. Sometimes we get imaging. Sometimes we get lumbar punctures for CSF. Sometimes we get skin biopsies so that we can develop pluripotent stem cells to develop models of Alzheimer's disease. We bank all of that information. So that happens every year. They come in year after year after year. Once you're in the ADRC, we want you in for life. Most of the people do stay in for the duration of their life. Most have agreed to autopsy, and we have a high autopsy acquisition rate. Somewhere around 75 to 80% of the people who are enrolled in the ADRC eventually come to autopsy, and we have their brain specimen. So you can imagine that generates lots and lots of data. We try to keep an active cohort. When we first began enrolling back in the 80s, we were shooting for a cohort between 400 and 500 people, with about 200 of them having Alzheimer's disease, 150 or so having normal cognition and being the controls, and then groups with various other neurodegenerative diseases making up the rest. And then, of course, there is attrition as people die and come to autopsy. We go out and re-recruit and refill the cohort so that we can keep that active 400 to 500 people going. And we do have some drops. Our dropout rate is not very high, but occasionally people will move or drop out for other reasons, and we replace them, so we can keep that steady state going. So you can imagine over 40 years, we've collected lots of data over time. And what I'm showing just in this first slide, this is what happens at the annual evaluation. So this is some of the kinds of information that we gather. It's the kind of information or data that you can use for your individual projects if there's something specific you're interested in. So you can see lots of scales, depression scales, scales for psychiatric features. Recently, we started getting pulse wave velocity as a measure of arterial stiffness. We get blood pressure, do a physical examination. We've done blood tests where we get kind of standard blood workup done, as well as with the more recent developments of plasma biomarkers for Alzheimer's disease, we're able to look for those now in blood. The other major things to look at, I would say, are I mentioned psychiatric features. We get measures of subjective cognitive decline, working with Zinka Zlatar, one of the professors here, working with the Alzheimer's Center. I think she's online. So we collect subjective cognitive decline information using scales that she recommended. We also get a clinical dementia rating. So we kind of rate how severe the dementia is in individuals. And then we have special modules for frontotemporal dementia or dementia with Lewy bodies. And more recently, we've been enrolling some individuals with Down syndrome. So, so how do I read that? And then, so that's kind of the clinical information we gather. This, I don't expect you to see it very well, but we do our extensive neuropsychological evaluation where we have multiple tests across different cognitive domains. So memory, language, executive functions, visuospatial ability, and attention, and psychomotor speed. Multiple measures in each of those domains so that we can apply an actuarial approach. Mark Bondi, Amy Jack, and a bunch of us neuropsychologists affiliated with the ADRC came up with this approach where we can have what we think is a more accurate and early diagnosis of cognitive impairment based on this battery. We also collect blood, as I mentioned, annually on all the people who are enrolled in our active cohort. We collect it overnight. We do standard blood tests, and we also send it out so that we can get measures of plasma markers of Alzheimer's disease. We can also do some of that in-house. We have LumiPulse just about set up. So we can do in-house assessment of A-beta-42, A-beta-40, but we also send the sample, at least portion of the sample, to a national repository for Alzheimer's disease, NICRAD, and they'll also do that and send results back to us. So I mentioned on a subset of individuals, and we're probably up to maybe I don't know, a couple hundred, 200 to 300 samples or individuals who have provided CSF, and we can look for markers of Alzheimer's disease and neuroinflammation, neurodegeneration in CSF. This is just to give you a sample. It's a lot up here, but this is just where our current active cohort is as of a few months ago. So total samples, 435 individuals. We've now shifted so that we take more people with normal cognition. As I mentioned, we only had used to have 100 to 150 individuals. Now it's about 230, 240. And that is because the field and our interest has moved towards a more preclinical stage of Alzheimer's disease. So now that we have these biomarkers that we can reliably measure, we can identify people who apparently still have normal cognition, or at least on standard kinds of tests and evaluations, but they have biomarker evidence that they have Alzheimer's disease pathology developing in their brain. So they're very interesting. We can follow them over time and see how the disease develops in those individuals. And then we have about 100 people who have a full-blown dementia syndrome, primarily due to Alzheimer's disease. All of those measures are administered every year. And in fact, let me see if I have it here. Come back to that. This is, I know you can't see this very well, but these are all of the individual tests that we've given over the years from 1984 until close to now. And if you see what's shaded in pink, that's what's been administered throughout the entire 40-year course of the Alzheimer's Center. So we have a lot of data on a lot of different tests that is longitudinal. So we're able to see how people change in terms of their cognition over time. And then we have the same thing for the clinical variables. You won't go into it, but same idea. So over a 40-year period, we have that over the lifetime of someone from when they enrolled into the ADRC until the time they died. We have these annual here. So since the inception of the ADRC, we've enrolled about 434 Hispanic individuals. About now the number is higher than that. It's about 120 people who are Latino who are currently active. So we're very proud. We're one of the few places that has been really successful in getting autopsies. So of our Latino population, we have 77 autopsies, and we were able to look at the brain. And within the last 5 years, we published a couple of papers describing our autopsy findings, if you're interested. All of them have contributed DNA and plasma samples. So we can look for plasma markers of Alzheimer's disease. 115 have research MRIs. 61 of our Latino participants have actually had a lumbar puncture and provided CSF, so we can look for AD biomarkers there. We also evaluated 4 extended Latino families who were in the area or came to the area who have a familial genetic mutation for Alzheimer's disease. Now that's kind of what our Latino initiative is. The 120 we were mentioning, currently probably about half of them are tested in Spanish and prefer to be tested in Spanish and are Spanish dominant. And we have Dr. Tamar Golan, who is an expert on psycholinguistics and bilingualism in Alzheimer's disease. She has developed methods so that we can actually objectively measure the degree of bilingualism to determine dominance, language dominance. We've looked at the impact. She has studies that we collaborate on looking at the impact of Alzheimer's disease on bilingualism. So trying to determine, is there a breakdown of both languages at the same time as the disease progresses? Does one language suffer more than the other early in the course of Alzheimer's disease? And so on, questions like that. Is the brain organization different if you do functional imaging in a language task? Is it different in a bilingual individual versus a monolingual speaker? So all of those kinds of questions we're addressing. We have the capability of testing in Spanish. We have a fully bilingual staff at the ADRC, so we can do all the clinical evaluations, all the neuropsychological testing in Spanish. And we were a leader in actually translating a lot of forms and neuropsychological tests into Spanish. And that's kind of been taken over now on a more national level by the whole, it's called NAC, National Alzheimer's Coordinating Center. But they actually took a lot of our translations into account for all the Alzheimer's centers. And in fact, one of the tests that we developed here, Dr. Golan and a few of us working together developed a multilingual naming test that has kind of replaced the Boston naming test for assessing language in people who are bilingual, and particularly in people who speak Spanish. And that was adopted by all of the Alzheimer's centers in the country a few years ago. So kind of more on the biological side, just wanted to mention that we have a biomarker core that can use Lumipulse assays to analyze both CSF and plasma. In total, we've had about 537 of our participants that have provided CSF. That includes multiple extractions from the same person. We banked longitudinal samples on about 1,350 people, 409 currently active ADRC participants, and 178 legacy participants. So this is usually blood biomarkers of blood that we have banked over the year. We have 1,588 MRIs from 693 subjects. We processed 500 of the MRIs for brain volumetrics using FreeSurfer and shared those with this national consortium, NAC. So Dr. Brewer was instrumental in finally getting all our MRIs shared on a national level with NAC. And we are really in the first steps of getting tau PET imaging, and we've been doing amyloid PET imaging on a number of our participants. It's really, the number is increasing, has to increase rapidly these coming years. It's going to increase a lot. And we're doing tau PET imaging as well. So we're going to be doing at least, what's our number, like 40 to 50 a year, I think, even more than that. About 40 to 50 a year we'll be getting both amyloid and tau PET for the next 5 years. I mentioned we also have a stem cell core, pluripotent stem cells. We've had fibroblasts, which you do a skin punch to get a fibroblast, where you can use those cells, you can convert them into neurons, into stem cells and then into neurons. We've had about 78 people, participants in the ADRC, who we have done this, and they've provided these fibroblasts that are available for sharing. We have these familial AD lines. We also have stem cells from them. Rusty Gage and Jerome Mertens, who run our stem cell core, actually developed a method where they can directly convert the cells into neurons without going through the stem cell portion where you have to go back in time. Because when you develop a stem cell, it's like a rebirth of the cell. With the induction of the neuron, they can actually keep all of the aging markers in the cell, in the new cells at the same time. So now you're looking at a model that is from a skin cell from a person with Alzheimer's disease, but also you're keeping the aging component in, since Alzheimer's disease is an age-related disease. We mentioned that, and I think that's all I wanted to cover. Just the last thing, I just wanted to show you this. So those are the resources that are available at the ADRC. All that data is archived. There are ways to access that you'll be hearing about in the future. Ways that you can see what's in our data set and that sort of thing. The other one of the major, I think, roles of the ADRC is kind of broker and foster scientific information on Alzheimer's disease and related disorders to our broader community here at UCSD and all of our partner institutions, San Diego State, Scripps Research Institute, Salk Institute, Stanford Burnham. All of us come together, and ADRC is kind of a clearinghouse for passing information on Alzheimer's disease in the community. So this is just showing us as the hub, and other people will say they're the hub, but we'll say we're the hub. And if you just start, if you go clockwise from midnight, we have our ADRC seminar series where we bring in top speakers, top scientists in the world of Alzheimer's disease who come in and give lectures and seminars. Also, we keep slots available for our own local investigators who are also top experts in the world. That happens at least once or twice a month. We usually have a seminar. We have 80 scientific interest groups. Some of you are probably already in the 80, we call it the cognitive interest group. It's kind of merged back in with imaging, so it's kind of a cognitive imaging interest group where everyone who's doing research on Alzheimer's disease, interested in cognition and imaging, come together. It's just a forum where we can keep each other informed of what we're doing. So there's so much Alzheimer's research going on in the UC campus, it's difficult to know what our colleagues are doing, much less what's going on in the world. So it's nice for us to all talk to each other, exchange ideas, develop collaborations, and we can do that through these interest groups. We also have a biomarker interest group. Then we work with the county. There's an Alzheimer project run by the county. We provide expertise for that. The training you all are familiar with is what we're doing now. Lunch and Learn, you all know, we're doing that now. We also run CME conferences for continuing medical education for providers, healthcare providers in the community who need to know about Alzheimer's disease. So we provide a conference where we give our expertise, we bring in other experts to talk about Alzheimer's disease, all the major developments, all the new treatments, and give that information so that geriatricians and other physicians, nurses, and other healthcare providers in the community can provide good care based on the newest science. We do community presentations throughout San Diego County for educational purposes and also for recruitment purposes to let people know they can participate in Alzheimer's disease research. And we try to be very inclusive with that. We send our bilingual staff who speak Spanish. We go into the Latino areas of San Diego, or at least areas that have a high Latino percentage of the population, and we give talks and information about Alzheimer's disease. And then every few years we have something called the Data Blitz, and some of you may have been to that last time. And again, that's a place where we allow each investigator only 5 minutes to talk about their most recent exciting finding related to Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. We want the people actually doing the research to get up there, say, this is my finding for this year related to Alzheimer's disease. And it's a real rapid fire, but it really gives you a sense, if some of you may have been last time, gives you a sense of just how broad and how much Alzheimer's disease and related research is going on here in the San Diego area, really high level stuff. And again, it's a place where we hope will foster collaborations and really keep the research going. So I talk a lot, that's kind of a broad overview of what the ADRC does, the kind of data we have available to share, and then in terms of kind of the actual resources. But then the intellectual resources are also there, and you'll hear a little bit about some of that as we go along. So,
great. Thanks, David.
Yep.
I think.
Okay, great. And yes, hello. Thank you for having me here. My name is Ryan Nakashima. I work for the San Diego Supercomputer Center, which is a department on the UC San Diego campus. And yeah, we basically exist to help researchers with their computing and storage needs, as well as other data science and related things that we can help with. Something that I try to start out with is I try to give the picture of what that means, what SDSC is, because most people will think, okay, SDSC, supercomputer. That means that it's mostly just a bunch of people operating this giant computer. But we really have a lot of people working at the Supercomputer Center, which includes a bunch of researchers, scientists, people who are probably doing a lot of the similar things to what you all are doing as well, in addition to the people that maintain the systems that we provide to researchers to use. And then, yeah, we have a lot of programs that go on at the Supercomputer Center, so feel free to check out our website, www.sdsc.edu, and see if there's any events going on that might be interesting to you, because we will have training programs and that kind of thing going on. And then, so yeah, that's a bit about kind of the people and what we do. It is a institution that is on the campus. We're located really close to the REMAC gym on the north side of the campus, if you all know where that is. And we have a very impressive data center facility there, where it's the largest facility in the University of California system. And we have, hundreds and hundreds of these racks of servers that live at the Supercomputer Center's data center that provide the compute and storage that people use. And so now I'll talk about the actual systems that might be of interest for people to use when doing their research. Our first and foremost, the flagship SDSC supercomputer is called Expanse. That is an NSF-funded system where the way that people use it is they submit scripted jobs to a queue, or they request to run jobs interactively on the supercomputer. If you're not really familiar with what a supercomputer is, the way I like to kind of explain it is that it's just really a bunch of computers that all work together to do calculations either on a bigger scale or to do them faster than what you'd be able to do with your desktop or laptop. To use Expanse, it's a pretty simple application process, where the first step would be to apply for a trial allocation, which will give you a certain number of service units that then are effectively currency that you can use to use computing resources on Expanse. And so, yeah, that's Expanse. We also have a kind of more local community cluster called TSCC, the Triton Shared Computing Cluster. That workflow to use it is very similar. You submit jobs to a queue or run interactively on the system, but instead of applying through the NSF-funded access program, people usually will contribute servers to the cluster to make it grow bigger, which allows you to access the entire community of clustered servers so that you have more computing power than if you were to just buy one server for that SDSC and let it run there. You can also ask for a trial to get started there by emailing tscc-support@ucc.edu. And I will share these slides at the end, so you don't have to try to write down anything if you're interested in trying to use these things. Another service that we have is SDC Cloud, which is more of a kind of like a virtual computer type of service where you're able to start up your own virtual instance or computer and say that maybe you want a GPU or maybe you want a lot of memory because you need to do a really memory intensive analysis on something. You'd be able to go into this SDC cloud service, spin up that instance, install software on there, and then and of course load any data that needs to be on there, and then do any processing that you need to do. With this service, it's more of a pay for each hour of usage of the instances, and you can ask for a trial by emailing services@sdsc.edu. Lastly, out of like what I would say are the main SDSC focus computing services, we have Sherlock, which is more focused on compliant solutions, where if you're dealing with a lot of health data, which I'm guessing that a lot of you are, Sherlock specializes in securing the computing and storage platforms to allow it to be compliant with HIPAA regulations and any other regulations that you might need to meet. Their contact information is sherlock@sdsc.edu. And that's also a service where you would usually buy time instead of applying with a proposal. And then SDSC is involved in some larger scale programs as well, where there is the National Research Platform, which is a multi-site distributed computing cluster, which means that there are some parts of this platform that are located at SDSC, but I believe there's something like 50 other institutions spread out across the whole globe now, where you'd be able to submit computing jobs, have them run, and try to get back results from. For this one, you'd have to get started by going through a program called Nautilus, where I'm not going to try to read that URL because it's a bit longer. But again, I will share this in case you're interested in checking it out. We also have a couple of more experimental computing systems. One that's active right now is called Voyager, which is specifically designed for AI workloads. And that's something that I believe you would have to go and email consult@sec.edu. Sorry, I just realized I didn't put that on here. So I'll add that before I share the slides. And then there's also another one, which I don't have a slide for yet because I think it's still too new. And that one is called Cosmos, which is another kind of experimental platform. I think also either focused on AI workloads or machine learning workloads. And yeah, so those are the main computing platforms. And we do have a number of services that include other types of use cases, mostly along the lines of storage, but we also can help with data administration, system administration, cloud integration, and application development, as well as other things. Specifically for storage, we have three primary storage services. The first one that I'll mention is called Universal Scale Storage, or USS, also sometimes referred to as Cumulo. That is the largest storage service on the campus. There's something along the lines of, I think, about 30 petabytes of stored data in that service across various departments on the campus. And it can be mounted onto the supercomputers or Linux systems that are on the campus so that people can interact with it as if it's just a drive on their computer that they're trying to use. We also have a cloud storage service, which allows people to store data relatively inexpensively. It's not something that's great to try to compute directly off of, but it's really good to be able to share data with people, and again, to store data a little more inexpensively, since it doesn't have to be connected directly to the compute. Lastly, I'll mention that we have a project storage service, which is better for smaller data sets, although for us, small is about a terabyte of data. I realize that that might sound like a large amount of data, but a lot of the workloads that we see, especially with genomics, are dealing with terabytes of data. Project stores can also be mounted on supercomputers or Linux systems, and to a limited extent, Windows or Mac systems as well. And then there are just a couple of other projects I should mention. One is CloudBank, which is really a service that I would say is more of kind of like a cloud broker system, where if you wanted to use AWS or Azure or another cloud service, you can apply for credits through this CloudBank service. And then you can try to, get access to cloud services relatively inexpensively that way. And then there's also the Open Storage Network, which is a distributed cluster that has locations at SDSC and at some other institutions around the nation. And that's a great way to store some data to share it with collaborators and let them access it, and also to have multiple copies of data live for redundancy purposes. And then I did promise that I would share kind of an example of how services could be consumed, where it's very common for people to come to us and say, hey, I need to do some genomic sequencing. And the typical way that that happens is that people will upload data to one of the storage services at SDSE, where we highly recommend using Globus, which we partner with the research IT group on the campus, who you'll hear from after me. And then to provide this Globus service that allows people to really quickly and efficiently move data in and out of SDSC. It also, Globus lets you kind of nicely present data to collaborators in collections so that they can go and browse data and choose what type of data that they want to try to download from you if needed. And so we often tell people, hey, if you're all set up with Globus, where it's really easy also to set up a Globus account, go ahead and transfer your data over to us into USS or another storage service. And then since the data in USS can be mounted directly onto the supercomputers, it's really easy to load the data into our supercomputers, such as Expanse, and sequence the data. And then once the data is sequenced, any data that needs to be stored persistently, we would say, okay, move that back into your USS directory. And then using Globus again, go ahead and feel free to share that out with your collaborators, with reviewers, anyone else that you need to provide access to. The data can live in USS pretty much indefinitely. So then it's really nice to be able to say, hey, all my data is here. It's very safe, and uh, there's a very, very, very like almost infinitely low chance that any data would be lost. So it's a really nice peace of mind for researchers to say, hey, this is just where my data lives, and this I'm going to share it with people after the processing is done.
Okay. Whoops, sorry about that. Again, thanks for having me today. I'm Sid Burrows. I'm currently serving as interim director on Research IT Services team. I'm the senior research facilitator. As you can see, we're a very small team. We are comprised of a small team of research facilitation expertise and a team of systems integration engineers. What we mainly do, we are a institutionally funded unit within Central ITS on the main campus. We are 9 years young, I say. The unit was founded just before I came on board to UCSD. I was the first facilitator hired in here. And it's been really interesting and a pleasure to help develop this program and watch it grow on this campus and help the researchers that we are so fortunate to interact with. We work with all disciplines on both the main campus and the health sciences side of things. Our services are offered at no cost to the researcher. Because we are institutionally funded, so there's no recharge for our consulting services or our integration services. Some solutions may come at a cost depending on what is recommended when we do a consultation with a researcher. For instance, we may have some free services that we can recommend as a part of a technology portfolio, but there may also be some solutions that are going to have some expense associated with them, like storage or compute or something like that. Again, and another interesting fact is that we are actually located in the San Diego Supercomputer Center, just a couple floors up from Ryan's team on the same wing. So our services for supporting research computing and data. We have a local research cluster that our team manages and supports. It's free to researchers in all disciplines on our campus. And by researchers, I mean undergraduate, graduate students, postdoc scholars, principal investigators, faculty, staff researchers, everyone. So if there's a researcher on our campus who needs a resource that is kind of just beyond their desktop or just beyond their workstation, this is the next step in kind of offloading that workflow from a local computer. So we do that. We do have that as a free resource. If that's not adequate, we also work with a lot of national computing resources, and those would be things like Ryan mentioned briefly, the Access Consortium. The Access Consortium is a group of many very large supercomputing centers across the nation that donate excess time to research projects and make those computing cycles available to them. So we work with folks to get them onboarded to the appropriate platforms that are most suitable for the type of work they're doing. NRP was one Ryan mentioned, that's another one. And then we also work with storage solutions. Again, we try to find things that are the most cost-effective first. Sometimes more is needed. And then we do have recommendations for storage solutions that do come at a cost. One is the USS brokering program that we have a agreement with SDSC. Generally, SDSC sells their universal scale storage in 200 terabyte increments, which is a lot for some of the researchers we work with. And the agreement we have with SDSC is that we will resell that to researchers in 25 terabyte bricks at no additional cost and no markup. So we basically take on the labor intensive pieces of onboarding folks and make smaller quantities available to smaller research projects. We do work with Globus, as Ryan mentioned. We are one of the funding contributors to keep Globus licensed and subscribed to on our campus. So for large data transfers for projects that require collaboration and frequent data exchange with others, whether those are UCSD affiliates or other institutional affiliates outside of ours. We can arrange to have Globus collections created for those folks where your data flow can just be going back and forth at in a very easy manner through a graphical user interface. So a lot of computing skills aren't needed to learn how to use some of these things. It's a very intuitive platform. So we've subscribed to that, I think, for about 3 years now, and it's been very popular and very well received. We work with a lot of folks who are adopting commercial cloud, AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft Azure. The University of California has BAAs or agreements with all 3 of those outside commercial vendors, and we help researchers to get onboarded to those platforms and establish their accounts and learn how to use the basic services. And our systems integration engineers help with architecture in the cloud and a lot of complex workflows that they can help with in that regard. We work with data management and support in terms of even from the ground up when folks are first working with building and writing their grants. We can help with boilerplate language when it comes to a lot of these services that are going to support the work they're doing so that it sort of bolsters their presentation of their proposal. We can help with identifying solutions and services that are available through all pieces of the data lifecycle. And we do a lot of training. Here you'll see I've mentioned Carpentries. Carpentries are workshops it's an international volunteer organization called the Carpentries. And our institution has a subscription to the Carpentries. We pay in and we develop 6 instructors a year to offer these free workshops to our communities. And so researchers who don't have much computing experience but need to learn programming like R or Python or SQL, Bash and Git, those types of things, they can come to these workshops for free and learn those really foundational coding skills. Consulting services, what we do is work with people to really narrow down the types of hardware and software that they need in order to have the best the best solutions available for their particular research project. And really we find that everybody's project, you would think that across this campus that there would be a lot of kind of cookie cutter solution packages out there where you might just say, oh, here's all the things you need to do this, workflow, because we see a lot of that. But it's not really true. Everyone's research project has some kind of small nuance that makes it different from someone else's. And so when we consult with researchers and research projects and groups, we like to really dive into all of those details about the project, whether that be collection of field data or instrumentation that's attached to compute, or where's their storage and how are their collaborators working together. So there are so many variables that we really like to have a consultation with folks before we make any recommendations for data and compute resources that would be best for them. And then what we do is kind of go away and assemble a technology portfolio and workflow, and then come back to the researcher and say, here's kind of what we came up with. And often there's more than one option, and they may end up deciding between 2 or 3 things depending on their needs. And for instance, do they want the fastest compute, and do they want their data geographically close to their compute so that their latency is low, or do they want the cheapest thing possible? So there are options sometimes, and we can make all of those selections available and put that together. Again, collaborative tools, whether that's Google, whether that's OneDrive, whether that's Globus, there's a lot out there that we can use to network people together and make the research seamless and smooth. We help with security a lot, and we have been involved with what was called the cybersecurity certification for research project that came out of the Chief Information Security officer's office several years ago. And so we do work with a lot of folks and always ask them about their security protocol and whether they have the proper softwares installed on their devices to keep them from getting hacked. We do see, unfortunately, when folks get attacked with ransomware, or their data gets stolen, or their machines get infected, it's a very unfortunate thing that we do see that frequently. And so we try to work individually with researchers to make sure that they have the proper softwares and protections in place, and at the same time making sure that those won't in any way interrupt their research work. Often we see things like old instrumentation that has to be attached to, say, a Windows XP computer, because any other updates to that computer might break the instrumentation or the flow of data. And so we'll work with the researchers and the labs in that case to make sure that those systems can remain intact and not require updates. Put some boundaries and parameters around those machines, or remove them from the network so they're not vulnerable. So those are the kind of things we try to help with. Again, commercial cloud architecture and onboarding, and just general troubleshooting and problem solving. It's unfortunate, again, that most of the time when we hear from researchers, it's when they've run into a problem and not when they're starting to write their grant, and not when they're starting to think about the research life cycle and all the pieces they're in and how we can help them to sort of design that from the ground up. But we're here to help with all of those things and usually get things back on track and make some good recommendations. Our systems integration engineers are extremely talented technical people. We offer up to 80 hours of integration assistance per project. I think that's a very flexible number. We have never charged anyone for our work, to be honest. So they are here to help, and with all kinds of things, whether that be lab equipment, whether that be racking things in a data center, whether that be software integrations, collaborations, all those types of things. Again, the security and troubleshooting. Our systems integration engineers are also available to help researchers develop proofs of concept that they may want to put forth with a grant proposal, so that the funding agencies could kind of get a glimpse as to what this proposed project is, what the vision is for it, what they think it's going to look like, how they think it's going to manifest itself. So they are here to help develop those types of mini projects too, or prototypes. And as always, and Ryan can attest to this as well, we're always adapting our service as needs change, which is constant in this world. And you can contact us at research-it@ucsd.edu if you have any questions, or would like to sit down with some of us for a consultation or ask questions.
That's great. Thanks, Emily. Hi, hello everyone. My name is Jing Zhou. I'm the co-leader of the data core with Dr. Steve Edlund. Mainly, I work on the statistical consultation aspect of the data core. In particular, for example, if the researcher has a request for grant proposal support, especially if there's a need for statistical component in that proposal, we usually set up a meeting. And here I have listed a typical steps for statistical consultation. So usually when the requests come in, we have an initial meeting, which is usually brief, but we'll touch base with the researcher and ask about what is the general scope of the research, the goals, and in particular, the specific aims, if they have been already developed. And those are the most important actually aspects for me to understand what is the main goal of the study. And also because usually the aims, when it's clearly defined, will lead to the statistical hypotheses, and then it will lead to statistical analysis that will take care of the hypotheses. And then it will become clear what should be done regarding the analysis plan and also the power analysis, which is also very critical in such proposals. So generally we'll talk about those things, but start from the specific aims. And if there is a research strategy already developed, we will also talk about the study design, analysis plan, including the appropriate designs, whether it's longitudinal, observational, and the corresponding statistical approaches, like linear mixed models, t-tests, survival analysis, and so on. And another component which we typically deal with less because for the data management, my experience is usually coming from the team of the researcher. But we can also consult and answer some questions, especially they are related to the data analysis, because the way the data are managed, are cleaned, is also crucial for the later analysis. And then the 4 and 5 are typically happen after the proposal has been granted. And although the analysis plan will be included in the proposal, but generally the more details will be discussed if it's granted, and how to plan the corresponding analysis, and including consultation on the computation analysis using packages, available software. And the last thing is manuscript writing when there is any involved. And we usually also provide support, for example, getting involved as co-author or as a co-I, and craft the corresponding section of the statistical method, and help check the writing of that section. So that's generally the steps and procedure for us to do the consultation. So we are just here to advertise our core, and if you have any questions or you need help, let us know. And we are here to help. And another thing is my personal research focus, especially in recent years, has been on the statistical analysis and machine learning on device from digital devices, wearable device, like physical activity data, sleep data, eye tracking data, which I'm working with Diane on her R1. But I generally deal with data coming from devices that are complex, high frequency, sometimes multimodal, like you have different sensors and different sensors measure the activity at the same time. And we have developed methods, especially from using state-of-the-art machine learning methods to predict, for example, the state of the participant. And I think another important question is how those features you learn from those data are related to the health outcomes, and which can be applied in the Alzheimer's context. So that will be another interesting thing to discuss if you have anything. So that's it.